Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Thanks so much for joining us for another edition of Donnybrook. Wow, lots to talk about, including a resignation by the circuit attorney in the city of St. Louis. We'll get to that. But first, let's meet the panelists, starting with Wendy Wiese from the Big 550 KTRS, Mr. Bill McClellan from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Ray Hartmann from Ray Hartmann's Insider St. Louis Insider, excuse me, on Substack. Thank you very much, Ray. And Alvin Reid from the St. Louis American. And we want to thank Missy Castro for loaning her artwork to the set for this edition. We invite local artists to contribute their artwork so we can display it and so it can enhance our set. And if you'd like to learn more about Missy, you can learn more at Missy@lemonadestanddesign.com. That's Missy at lemonadestanddesign.com. We're going to start with you, Ray, because on your wonderful Substack column, you wrote about the resignation of Kim Gardner this week, the circuit attorney. Kind of surprised everybody because she did resign, although she was scheduled to leave by her own schedule, June the 1st. And what was your take there?
Well, first of all, in retrospect, and this happened a little bit after I wrote it, it was clear that she messed this up, as she did many things, by bringing in attempting to leave early, which I'm guessing was because of, whether rightly or wrongly, because of the cases, the contempt case and the Quaranto case. She might have decided she needed to get out. And what turned out to be very improperly, she tried to bring in Wesley Bell to take over the stuff in her office. Now, there was nothing nefarious about that. I happen to get a kick out of the fact that, in my opinion, it was kind of tongue-in-cheek, that the people incredibly across the board, the media were very upset that she was leaving when they had wanted her to leave, leaving early, when they had been crying for her to leave all along. And so I had a little fun with that. But I think the more important point is that she brought in Wesley Bell to handle cases which, had she stayed in office, it was almost routine. Prosecutors do that all the time with other prosecutors. Where she messed up was leaving early. And once she left the office, she didn't have the legal authority to designate Wesley Bell, and it's going to work out fine.
But she had several offers for at least
absolutely
months, if not longer, from prosecutors close by for help, and she refused.
Unacceptably refused. Absolutely.
She refused.
You know, it was all ludicrous. I thought it was like she was leaving and decided there's a window that hasn't been broken yet and threw a brick at it. I mean, this, and the idea that she could give her authority to Wesley Bell, that's crazy, Ray.
Right,
I mean, with these people are office holders, not office owners. Right. I mean, you can't rent or sell or give away the authority of your office to anybody. And why Wesley Bell was even messing around with that, I found very puzzling.
I'll maybe come back to that. But, okay, first of all, the whole thing, since it's just been an unmitigated disaster, and I honestly thought there was absolutely no way it could get any worse. I know that they actually kind of mean the same thing, but Kim Gardner didn't resign on Tuesday. Kim Gardner quit. And Kim Gardner quit and left a wake of confusion behind her, and you would think that that was impossible. After everything that has gone on, she left that place in more disarray than it was the day before, or probably at any point when this whole thing was unraveling. And it's just shameful. And I mean, I'm embarrassed, okay, as a resident of this region, but I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm embarrassed as a black person because this feeds into so many different attacks on legitimate people. This is just on the pale, inexcusable.
She happened to be African American, but let's face it, there are crazies like George Santos all over the place.
But I will say, the point I'm making is like, I'm not sugarcoating this. This is bad.
Well, it is bad because
you said that.
A very good point, because all around the country there are other prosecutors who are all tarred with this Kim Gardner thing now.
Oh, come on. No.
so.
What's kind of funny is that Rachel Rollins, who is the progressive prosecutor, actually she became the U.S. attorney in Boston, she resigned on the same day. But what's good, if I'm going to be Little Miss Sunshine for just a moment, or Mr. Sunshine, and that is that you got 6 prosecuting attorneys and the Attorney General's office and 3 downtown law firms all saying, hey, we'll chip in and help. So even though the story is terrible because, as this morning's paper pointed out, she actually dropped 9,000 cases, 9,000. But others are coming together, and they're going to try and make it a better situation.
We actually predicted that would happen, and you refused to believe that that would happen.
No, my concern is it's not going to change really quickly. It's going to take years because the data is just so great.
I still don't think so.
I applaud you for saying what you did, because to me, her greatest infraction, her greatest violation of the office was by making this in a city that has been roiled by race underneath the surface, simmering under, to make this about race when every single one knows that it wasn't. It makes it more difficult when it is about race.
That's all I'm saying.
For those people.
That's all.
Yes,
that's
that
what
to me is the worst part of
Another thing
this.
that you have to feel bad for is the people who applied for the job. I think there were 18, the paper said today. I thought it was 22. But these were people who were going to get interviews with the governor's staff, and then the governor was going to pick, they would give 3 finalists to the governor. I mean, it was a very nice way to be doing it, I thought. And you know, who the governor would pick, I don't know, but I liked the process. And all of a sudden, when Kim Gardner quits, as Alvin said, and there's talk about, well, Wesley Bell could have taken over, and the governor said, I'll pick by Friday. So all these people who thought they could pitch their ideas and
prepared.
You know,
well, they can run next year. Let me ask you this: if this was just real quickly, if she was working, if she really was working as the Attorney General's stakeout claimed, and as a nursing student doing clinicals on Manchester Road during company time when she was supposed to be in court on contempt of court charges, shouldn't she still be charged?
No, I don't. I think it's best that we move on. But I will say that.
Why? She committed a crime.
Come on.
I mean, think about that. She stole from the taxpayers.
I wouldn't argue with the judge that threw that one out. I mean, I won't argue with him because he's the one who said it was the rudderless ship of chaos.
I know, but the taxpayers were getting ripped off because they were paying her to be circuit attorney.
I understand.
And she was, from what we understand.
I'm just gonna, if the judge decided enough is enough, like Ray is saying, then I can.
Since when do you defer to authority?
Well, Charlie, to respond to you,
it's a black judge.
To respond to you,
that next circuit attorney, right?
First of all, I think the more relevant reference here to that is I think that the chances of that Quo Warranto case having been successful were dramatically increased by that revelation. And so I think that may have been...
I think so was the contempt of court charge.
Right. And I think that, but again, this is a defense of her, it's an explanation that would probably account for her sense of urgency, which, whatever, I don't know what prompted it, but I'd say it went to her sense of urgency. The one place I will disagree, no, I'm saying it's why people say, why'd she leave? I'm guessing that fact accelerated her process. Now, that doesn't make it right. I'm just saying that's why she did it. Now, I will say this.
Suddenly she had keen legal acumen.
Well, no, I think she was in more trouble immediately because of that.
I just don't think either one of those could have came to fruition before June the 1st.
Well, I don't know. But obviously she must have. And so my point is this.
You can't say that she must have. You don't know, right?
Well, she may have. Okay. Okay. The point is,
she
it
had a-
doesn't matter. She's gone. But let me say this, that as far as this thing about race, let's not forget that 60% of the people in the city of St. Louis, particularly in North St. Louis, supported her, and their concerns were racial, and they were about the police department. And for us, one of the reasons I ended up sadly defending her a lot is I don't think that her leaving or her failures necessarily disproves the need for progressive prosecution.
She made it worse for African Americans
She
because
did.
And
She
the,
did.
the victims of crime.
She did.
Not
but
only the
my
victims
point
of
is,
crime.
But let's not have a victory lap for the people that were opposing her necessarily.
No, I think they deserve a victory lap because
Well,
there's nothing
don't mean-
progressive, there's nothing pro-African American by letting a guy languish in prison
No
for
doubt.
5 years.
No doubt.
Or jail, rather.
No doubt. No
And
doubt.
I mean, look,
I'm not defending her performance. I'm saying that
nobody should get a free pass. And
Thank
and
you.
I am
The-
not.
Right.
I'm just not going there.
Okay.
I don't care why you got elected.
Right.
I don't care who
Right.
voted for you. If you
Right.
fail that poorly, it makes those that supported you look bad. And there's just no getting
the
around.
people that wanted her out should take a victory lap. I'm talking about her art. Let's say she had a war from day one with the police department. And there were some legitimate issues on both
Not saying
sides,
that. Okay,
and this
But
doesn't
she's not
prove
an
that.
innocent bystander, Rich.
I understand.
She came in yelling.
I
at
didn't
people
say
and
she didn't,
accusing
but
people of
it doesn't prove that the police on all the things
I
they were
didn't
arguing
say
were right.
nobody's
That's-
saying no
well,
one
I'm
said
just
that.
making.
No one said
you
that.
watch. Okay.
No, but I'll
Maybe
tell you
not
what,
here.
whatever argument she may have had,
Right.
it's all moot now.
messed it up.
Police look right.
Hey,
everybody
police.
And that's my
Alvin,
concern.
Reid,
Right.
Speaking of the police, there was a crime summit yesterday in St. Louis. It was put together by the East-West Gateway Council of Governments, and in fact, you and I will talk about it on Next Up, halfway through this program, with Les Sturman from the Citizens for a Greater Downtown St. Louis and Professor Emeritus of Criminology at UMSL, Rick Rosenfeld. So that's at 5:30, everybody. Yesterday, there was a 6-hour summit. The media were allowed in for 2 hours, and they were kicked out. Then it proceeded for another 4 hours. The idea was to take a look at crime in the region, which was also summarized in a white paper by Professor Rosenfeld, which was released by Greater St. Louis, Inc. and the Regional Business Council last Friday. Overall, what were your impressions here?
Well, first, when this was announced, and then it was coming up again, and so then you got the whole, like, it's going to be 6 hours, and these people are going to speak and whatnot, and I just kind of thought, like, I'm not going to go. I mean, even though I could go to the part that the media was allowed to, I said, like, I'm not going to go, because I think I pretty much know what everybody's going to say already. And so I'm anxious to hear, what exactly went down and what was said. But I don't think you could go into one of those things and come out with definitive ideas on this is exactly what we're going to do. And everybody is going to get on board and let's go. So I don't want to say that nothing is accomplished through those. But at the same time, I would be surprised if within the next year, anything that was discussed yesterday is actually happening in the city.
Yeah, I think the only good thing is that people might meet each other that they didn't know. But as far as like the plans and everything, it's like a balloon release you have in the neighborhoods when somebody's shot. Hopefully this will change everything.
It's a little too close to one of the blue ribbon panel discussions that we are famous for. But this morning, Jay Kanzler, who's filling in for Jennifer, and his law partner, Mayor David Demmett of Brentwood, Mayor Demmett attended yesterday's crime summit, and he made that point, Bill. He said, that there were a lot of people. There was definitely a spirit of cooperation, regardless of any political differences. He said, and that was kind of unusual and a breath of fresh air, that there was more of a sense of just one purpose going forward.
Well, I'll be the one that says I think it was worse than not doing it, okay? And for one thing, this was a public body, the East-West Council of Governments, okay, a public body. We had 8 county executives, counting the mayor, who's head of a county. And unbelievably, the media was, by a if it's not a violation of the letter of sunshine laws, which it probably was to some extent, it certainly was of the spirit. And only Tony Messenger's the only journalist I've seen so far, besides me now, that was expressed. He wrote a column today, a good column, expressing his indignation about this. The Post-Dispatch, his own colleague Jacob Barger in the Post, even not only did he not bring it up, but he talked about one of the essential points in here, which is fine, which is it was, quote, an audition of sorts for the guy in Maryland who's going to give us, guess what, another study. And it's like, excuse me, Reid McClellan for real could do a better job on this than bringing it, paying, I don't care about the cost. I don't care what they paid for the UMSL study. It's all great. The point is, the last thing we need right now is another study. And
well,
and
not
when
really a
when
study,
you
Ray.
yes,
You're mischaracterizing it. Thomas Apt, who was at Harvard and he worked in the Obama and Clinton Justice Departments.
with his audition of sorts, yes, I'm sure he did a great job.
Well, he's not responsible for that, but for his description.
Sure, he's great.
But he has what's called focused deterrence, and it's worked in some other communities where you basically identify the top criminals and you approach them and you say, we're going to give you services and employment, and if you don't agree with us or cooperate, we're going to come down. The long arm of the law is going to come down on you.
Well, let's do focused deterrence then. And if we want to study, we want to send a delegation to study some community where it's working, fine.
No,
But
we're
we
not going to
don't
study
need
it.
kick
He's going to
this down.
bring it here.
Let me just respond a little bit to your remark about the reporter didn't even write that the media...
Didn't notice it.
That's not the sort of thing that the reporter would write about. I mean,
Well,
we have a columnist there who's going to write about that, but if people pick up the paper to read what the crime summit said, they don't want to be reading about the media had problems.
Well, I can tell you what, it's relevant to
was
the
in the
fact that
Business Journal.
he's
It was noted in the Business Journal.
he's reporting on stuff, and he didn't mention that he wasn't there. I mean, it's like...
He was reporting on what happened when he was there. I mean, I haven't read the story. The paper comes out tomorrow.
Good, fair.
No, I tend to agree with Ray a little bit on this one. The media should have been there, and it should be pointed out and all that.
But it's not a media...
Overall, the study by... Dr. Rosenfeld says that this issue is the biggest disappointment that St. Louisans have with our region, crime.
Right.
And I'm happy to see businesses and professors and others getting together. Now, we had Apt at the KMWX studios 3 years ago, and he sat next to the police chief, Hayden, the president of the Board of Aldermen, Louis Reid. They listened, they nodded their heads. Nothing happened. They went with Cure Violence, which is another program. So... who knows what's going to happen?
That this is going to be have any different outcome than Cure Violence.
I don't think you can
Yeah.
until you actually
But
see
the
some...
problem-
Agreed. And is anybody else, I mean, we just woke up in 2023 and now we are ready to declare that violent crime is the number one. It's been the number
You can't change the past, but you can change the future.
It's
Something
all
like that.
sun comes
I
up.
don't know.
Charles, it's all sun comes up in the east stuff. The problem is that and the reason I'm so focused on this media thing is it suggests that the party that needs to, at least at the moment, be left out is the party that actually has to be the essence of the solution, which is the public. That includes the community taking responsibility for, as we've heard on our show,
They're
the
just
idea
what to do. I mean, this isn't.
the
Even they don't pretend this is, a cure-all for tomorrow.
Yeah,
But
that's
the
right.
point is
they're
the
just
public,
coming up
the
with a plan.
exclusion of the public, and frankly, those people. Of
Yeah,
a
you know,
certain-
they excluded the rank-and-file police officers, too.
When they excluded
So they
the-
had brass
the people,
there, but not the...
Socioeconomically, I'm sure they excluded the people.
Well, I'm sure there's some rich people
that
who
are
didn't
the
get it
most
either.
that
Yeah,
are most impacted by crime.
Are we sure that the public didn't prefer being excluded?
Well, that's not a good reason to do it.
But, at the end of the world, as the Onion used to say, Ray's Substack column will say, end of the world is tomorrow, women and minorities affected most.
Whatever.
Look, I don't have a lot of faith that something will happen. So as a result, I just can't get whipped into a frenzy because they...
Ray,
That isn't solving anything.
Ray, the Republicans in Jefferson City weren't able to organize a one-man parade, as it turns out in this most recent legislative session. When it came to things like initiative petition reform and sports betting and foreign ownership of land, and the list goes on and on, they couldn't get their measures passed. And they controlled both houses and the governor's mansion. I have a theory that people are just too interested in getting their names in the paper or getting likes on Twitter, and they don't know anymore how to get the job done.
Well, you have to understand that the party is dominated by people who are opposed to government, okay? And so for them, the conservative caucus, whatever you want to call them, this was a victory. They got, I mean, they did get the one bill to persecute trans people done, which is horrible. But other than that, their agenda completely, not only did it fail, but it clogged up a lot of good legislation that had bipartisan support. And it was a terrible defeat for the kind of mainstream Republican leadership. And the people at the Missouri Independent had an interesting point that it was the Democrats couldn't have got any more than they could possibly wanted. You talked to Tracy McCreary, others. They had some important stuff that they were working on that was bipartisan that got through. And anything good had to happen quietly because the Republicans are in a position where they can't look woke if they support something.
Yeah, I mean, the Democrats, like in the city, who didn't want the state take over the police department, they won.
The Democrats had a great session.
I'm always happy when the legislature doesn't get a lot accomplished.
I get that.
I mean, most of this stuff is silly. Some of it borders on being sinister. And when they bollocks the whole thing up, I think that's good news.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
Most of the time.
Is that too? And I was just like, God, how could they file this up? It just seems impossible.
Right.
But I will say this: I don't want to hear anything from the Republican Party about government waste, because what is a special session cost like $350,000 that number? So now, how much did this cost from January to May for so little to get done? They wasted the people's money, and that's all of us, and that, I mean, that's inexcusable. Yeah, I'm glad a lot of that nonsense did get passed or even brought up, but
in a party of grievance, the fact that the people on the far right can say they fought to persecute this group or that group and failed, that actually feeds their message.
Oh,
so
brother.
they were winners. Yeah. And I agree with Bill.
Okay, let's move on. Bill, the St. Louis County Council has voted not to allow people to stand or sit or walk on county-owned roads in unincorporated St. Louis County. I think it's probably designed to make sure that the homeless are not begging in the medians when people stop at stoplights in their automobiles. But groups like TrailNet and others are concerned it's going to prevent joggers and bikers. What's your take on this?
Well, the county council is finally doing something for me as a citizen. I mean, I don't like people soliciting money out on the roads. I know our friend Beavis Shock, represented the homeless man, and it's his rights. I thought, yeah, I wish he hadn't done that. I don't like people asking for money on the roads, and I wouldn't mind seeing the joggers told off the road. I know most people don't agree with that. The joggers are some wonderful people, I'm sure. But I drive along and I see a jogger, and they're always, well, not always, they're wearing headphones sometimes, and I think, geez, he's leaving it all up to me. Mm-hmm. So I applaud the county council.
I just always said that, if you're going to just legislate the homeless off of the medians, you also have to, that takes out the firefighters and I guess maybe old newsboys and some religious groups. And it's kind of like they called my bluff and they passed this law, and it's kind of like, oh, well, yeah. Now I feel bad for the old newsboys and the people collecting money in the boot. I really didn't think they'd do it.
You mentioned YouTube. There's one famous YouTube video of a woman who is panhandling, getting into a luxury sedan, and that it could have been staged, but that has had a shelf life for years. And there are a lot of people who feel that those panhandlers aren't just homeless; that they are organized.
Well,
and there's been
I saw one
reporting on that.
After I left here. I got a couple weeks ago, and at 44, getting up.
Right.
There's a man with his family out there, and then it said, Venmo, and what's the other one?
Cash something,
yeah,
like an app.
And I like,
May I
okay.
disagree with
Real quickly, because I want to get to one more topic. No, real quickly.
Founder. I think that it was terrible legislation. As a very former marathoner, I disagree with you. There's a phrase called "share the road" that's supposed to apply to cyclists. It's not the motorist road anymore than it is cyclists, and so I think it's a terrible piece of legislation.
Very well. I want to move to the last topic. Wendy, Wiese, Kirkwood High School yearbook, 4 pages, apparently. I haven't seen it, but it's been described in media sources of sex and substance abuse. And some parents are concerned. Would you be concerned if you were a parent there?
I was so impressed with Aisha Sultan's column about it. She admitted, right up front, she said that usually she always takes the side of the student journalist, but she said in this case, kind of this hit or miss, sort of casual polling about sexual nature, about topics of a sexual nature, pictures of condoms, Plan B, that kind of thing. She said that deserves more in-depth analysis, that we can't be superficial and skim over something that is this important and could have an impact on the lives of these young people for a very long time.
I disagree with Aisha. She's a great columnist. I'm picking on all the media. And I used to argue about this with Martin on the Hazelwood East case 40 years ago.
Do it in the newspaper, though, Ray, not a yearbook.
Real quickly,
the yearbook in school, the newspaper, if they do something libelous or slanderous, they got to be edited. No question, because the districts are responsible. But just because people might think it's in bad taste, that's what free expression's for.
We're getting the time outside.
And I'm not in high school anymore,
Okay.
but I did go to that high school and I was on the call staff. I'll stand with my Pioneer yearbook folks.
Very well.
Leave them kids alone.
Hey, folks, you can write us with your reactions. Send your letters like these people did. Apparently, the panel found it humorous that the Missouri Legislature passed a bill to discontinue taxing Social Security benefits. Helping low income on Social Security isn't a real need. Wake up, Donnybrook. That from Fred McDaniel of Bonne Terre. Kate Reese wrote, would love to see an entire half hour dedicated to the increase in gun crimes and easing of gun laws in the state of Missouri. Love your show. Ms. Reese is in Jefferson County. Frank Weber of Fenton wrote, the round-the-table belittling of Todd Roberson was in poor taste. Some may have found him unpleasant to deal with, but his journalism was better than anyone at the table. Of course, Donnybrook needs new blood, but it appears that the only way anyone is replaced is to die. Thank you, Frank. You can write us care of 9 PBS 3655 Olive Street 63108. Don't forget those emails as well as the tweets. And you can also listen to us and call our 9 line at 314-512-9094, and then listen to us on your favorite podcast source. They would be Apple, Spotify, TuneIn, and Google Play. Don't forget to join us for Donnie Bash June the 15th, and don't touch that dial or remote. In a moment, we'll talk about crime and the Crime Summit yesterday in St. Louis.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9 PBS.